Welcome back to the continuation of the tutorial on texturing. Now we've created all of the geometries that we need. The next thing I'm going to do is try to unwrap all of this and export the UVs so that we can apply textures to them. Now, if you don't know what unwrapping is or what UVs are, look at the description in this video, and that will explain all of that, because I'm trying to keep this video quite short. So the first thing I'm going to try and do is save scene as, because I don't want to tamper with the original work that I did. This time around, I'm going to call this UV exports, just so that I'm able to identify each of the work that I've done. The next thing I'm going to do now is change my workspace from general. If you go right here, top right corner, I'm going to change it to UV editing. All right, so what this does, it helps us to really see the UVs, how they are unwrapped. There's so many types of mapping that you could do to really help you with texturing. For example, if I come up here under UV, I can go and say automatic mapping. So I'll click on automatic mapping. What this does is the software forces this shape to be broken into what it believes should be the right format. What I'm going to do here is try to arrange it in a way that I think it should look. So I'm going to take this a little bit out of place, and if I right click and go to edge, if I click on this edge, you notice that there's a corresponding edge highlighted here. So what I'm going to do now is try to merge this edge to this other edge here, so that it's easier for me to apply my textures on them. So with this edge selected, I'm going to come down to this option here where you have the UV toolkit. If you go right down, you see cut and sew. I will say stitch together. You will notice that those two edges have now been stitched together. I'll click on this other edge here. You will notice that this is the corresponding edge, and I can say stitch together again. All right, so that stitches them together. And here I'm going to do the same thing, but this time I'm going to hit on G, because G is just to repeat the previous action. All right, that's the shortcut for repeating the previous action. And I'll click here and I'll hit G again. And then finally, I'm going to click on this edge and I'll hit G. Now you'll notice that if I right click on the shell, you'll notice this looks very much unwrapped, which represents all of the faces of this cereal box. So I'm going to scale it down, because when you want to export, you want to make sure that all of your exports are within this 0 to 1 space. Okay. Now what I'm doing here is I'm doing Alt-B to change the look and feel of my window. All right, so I think this view might work. So I wanted to show you this green line and the red line is representative of the 0 to 1 space. So I'm done with the cereal box. I'm just going to bring it here. Now for the soda can, it looks like the software has tried to unwrap it for us. So because I can see that that represents the top of the soda can. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to go to unfold and just unfold it. All right, so what it does, it forces this shell to resemble the original model. I'll do the same thing for the lower part of the soda can. You can see that's the lower part, and I'm going to unfold it. All right, so I'll bring it closer to the upper part here. Now this is representative of the body of the soda can, but I can tell that this hasn't been unwrapped properly or unfolded properly. So with that selected, I'm going to do unfold. Now this looks more like it, because this resembles the face that's been selected here. So, but it doesn't look straight. You can tell it's not really straight. So what I'm going to do to make it straight, I'll right click and select UVs, and I'll select all of these UVs like that. And there's this option under here that says straighten UV, and I'm going to click on it once, and you can see the entire shell has been snapped properly, and it looks now like it is looking good. So that is fine. And I'm going to select these two because I want them to align properly. And I'm going to click on this option that says align shell along the V. So now you can tell that they're now on the same line. I'm just going to scale it down a little bit. So this will be the top of the soda can and that will be the bottom. I'm just going to place them here. And then this will be the body of the soda can. I'm just going to scale it down a bit. And then, so we've done the cereal box and the soda can. Now let's try and unwrap the plate. Now for the plate, I'm going to introduce you to a different type of unwrapping. I'll right click and select the plate. And this time around, I'm going to use what we call planar mapping. All right, so if you click on it, it's asking you from what axis are you trying to map this. Now, if you look at this gizmo at the bottom left here, you notice that it is the y-axis that is facing the top. So we want to map this plate from the top, and so we're going to choose y-axis, and then we'll say apply. You notice now that it has mapped this properly to resemble the plate. So I'm just going to scale it down a little bit. But you will notice also that the top part of the plate and the lower part has been mapped together. So we don't really have a demarcation between the top and the bottom. So I'm going to try and isolate the top from the bottom. So I'll come right here and I'll say edge. With that edge selected, I will say cut. All right, and it's cut. Now I can isolate the upper part of the shell from the lower part. So I'm going to select both of them and I'll just unfold them a couple of times. Okay, so now this shell represents the upper part of the plate and that represents the lower part of the plate. And I'm going to select both of them and I'll scale them down a little bit and I will try to align them also so that it's properly aligned. So we've done for the plate. Okay, now what's left? We have the cube. It's quite simple. I'm just going to go with automatic mapping again. So I'm going to go to UV and I will say automatic. Now it breaks everything into equal shapes, but like we did with the cereal box, I want to make sure that the edges are aligned properly. So I'm going to click on that edge and I will say stitch together. All right, so it stitches together. I'll click on this edge and I will say stitch together, and then I'll click on this edge, stitch together, and here I will say stitch together, and finally here I will say stitch together. So what we've done here also is to break this cube into different shells and we're able to now stitch them together. So this UV is representative of the cube. So the mug is a little bit complex. How are we going to approach this? I will try to map the handles separately. Okay, so this is how I'm going to approach this. I want to isolate this so that I can focus only on this cup here. So I'll do Control-1 to isolate it from the entire selection. Okay, so I'm going to go to face, select this face here, hold down Shift and double click to select that rim. If I hold down Shift and use my arrow key, I can grow that selection a couple of times, and I think I need this selection also, so I'm going to zoom in, hold down Shift and double click, so it selects all of those handles for me. Now you notice that the handle has been selected. I'm going to try and create a shell from this selection. Yeah, so there's this option here that says create UV shell. With that handle selected, I'm going to create the UV shell, and what that does, it's now isolated that selection from the actual mug. So I'm going to take a couple of faces here. So I'll select the shell. I'm going to try and cut it here. go to this edge, double click, and I'll cut it. Okay, so I'll select this shell and I'll unfold it, bring it up here, and then I'm going to select this edge, and just like we did previously, I'm going to try and stitch them together. So this shell is representative of the outer layer of this mug. All right, so once again, I'll select the shell, I will unfold it. I'll try to see if I can rotate it a little bit so that it's straight, something like that. Just like I did with the other object, I'm going to select UVs and I'll see if I can straighten the UV a bit. Okay, so that's fine. Now I'm going to select the other part of the mug itself. So this looks like the inside part of the mug. I'm just going to unfold it a couple of times. All right, I'll select that edge. I'll see if I can stitch them together. And then I'll select the entire shell and unfold it. I want it to look very rounded because you can tell that the shape there is round. So I'm going to select the edge and I'll stitch that together or sew them together. So as you can see now, I have this selection representative of the inside of the mug. And the last thing that is left here is the outer parts of the mug. I'm just going to unfold that a couple of times. Unfold, and I just want to make sure that this edge is sewn together. So I'll select that edge and I'll say sew. So I think we are done with all of our unwrapping. So this, I believe, is the handle, and I just want to unwrap it further. So I'm going to click on this edge here and double click, and I'm going to say cut, and I'll select the shell and I'll unfold it because it's safer to just have everything unfolded properly. And I'm going to rotate it a little bit to make it straight. Once again, I right click, UVs, select all of my UVs, and I will straighten UV. All right. I can actually straighten this upper part some more. So I'm going to select this upper part here and I'm going to make it straight using the scale tool, and I'll pull it down a little bit so that it doesn't look deformed. Same thing, select those UVs there, make them straight, use the move tool to bring it up. So this is looking clean. So that's representative of the inside of the mug. That's the bottom, and that's the actual exterior part of the mug, and that's the handle. Because we've broken down this mug into several shapes and we've modified the actual proportions, so the best thing for us to do is to make sure that these proportions are still relatively accurate. So what I'm going to do here, there's this option under tools. I'm going to get the density per unit for this selection by clicking on get. All right, and then I'll come here and I'll say set. So you see that it snaps to resemble the actual size of that. So I'll do the same thing here and I'll say set. So this is looking more proportionate. I'll click on that and I will say set. Okay, so that way, when you apply your textures, it doesn't look stretched or doesn't look out of proportion. So I'm going to scale this down. All right, so I'm going to bring back all of my objects by hitting Ctrl+1 so I can see everything. So that's the mug. Hold and shift so I can see the soda can, and that's the plate, and that's the cereal box, and that is the queue. You also don't want these UV shells to overlap because then you're going to have some issues with overlapping textures when you apply your textures. Okay, so that's looking good. Now with all of this selected, I'm going to export this selection. I'll make sure everything here is selected. There's this option here that says UV snapshot. All right, first thing I'm going to do is save, and then I'll say click on this UV snapshot icon here, and it's going to ask me, so where do you want to save this? I can tell it's already in the right place, which is images, and I'm going to change the image format from Maya to PNG. I'll click on PNG because we need it to be transparent when we're applying our textures. and then I will say apply and close. All right, so we've successfully unwrapped all of these textures and we'll put them all in one 0 to 1 space. And the next thing I'm going to do in the next video is start applying textures in Photoshop, and then we can bring it back into Maya for the final application. All right, see you in the next video. Bye for now.